Hi there, it's Kim here from the Emotional Alchemy Academy, and today I want to talk about lockdown loneliness and how to manage feelings of isolation and loneliness in lockdown, or actually at any time in your life. Now, I have had a lot of experience of loneliness. When I grew up, I was sort of an only child. My brother was severely autistic, and therefore he wasn't really available to talk to like a normal sibling. And because my mother had a lot of work to do to look after him, then I was left to my own devices. And when I was a child, really my main companionship, so to speak, were my dogs, our dogs, but not really human beings. And as I grew up, I tended to spend quite a bit of time by myself. Obviously, I had friends and I loved socializing with my friends, but I did spend quite a bit of time by myself. And in particular, for the last few years, I've been living by myself and have had to really face how to deal with loneliness, how to deal with the isolation of living by oneself and not having people around in the same house, and also working from home by myself. So that's like a double whammy in a way. And so I really had to dig deep and look at, well, what is loneliness? What are the feelings of loneliness, and how does one cope with feelings of loneliness? And as we sit in the COVID crisis right now, as I record this, then it's, this is going to apply to people who A, are by themselves, or B, anybody who is just simply not used to spending so much time indoors in their place of residence and not being able to go out and do the things that they normally do at the drop of a hat. There's socializing, or maybe going to work, or anything that we do that takes us out of the house. So what I want to share is some of the tips that I've really learned through having to deal with my own loneliness that may help you. Now, the first thing we need to ask ourselves is, well, what is loneliness? We say, okay, I'm feeling lonely, but have you ever actually really asked yourself, what is loneliness? And I classify it as an emotion, just like fear or grief or sadness or anger. And if we really tune in to what the feeling is of loneliness, it will be a sort of a feeling of sadness. That would be potentially the closest feeling that we could put on it. And it's also a sense of disconnection. And I'm going to share in this video the two levels of disconnection that we have. And the second level is not something that a lot of people think of. So the first level of disconnection is from other human beings, from other people. And as humans, we need connection. It's really, really important to have connection and to feel connected. And when we feel lonely or isolated, then obviously we're lacking that connection. Now, normally when, say, we're not in a crisis situation, when people feel lonely, they may resolve that by reaching out to somebody and doing something social and having that connection, or they may address it by what I call distraction. So distraction, and it doesn't mean that it's negative, but it just means we're putting our mind elsewhere and we're distracting ourselves from what we're really feeling, and then we create other feelings as a result of that distraction. And so that could be a positive thing. For example, watching a movie, cooking a meal, doing something creative, maybe going out, going and shopping, keeping busy, working. There are many ways that we can distract ourselves, and that can be very healthy. But we have to still address the fact that our body has created feelings of loneliness inside us. And one of the things that people don't generally do is manage or self-process those feelings directly. They're usually doing something indirectly to distract themselves so they don't feel the feeling. And this is one of the big habits that a lot of people have, is that they're not managing their feelings. In other words, they're not identifying what they're feeling. They're not able to label those feelings or self-process those feelings out of their body-mind. So in my classes, I have a method called the 5 steps to emotional awareness, or to dissolving emotions. And 4 of the steps, the 5th one's just it's just flown out of my mind right now, but it doesn't matter. This 4 is enough. What we have to do with emotions, or what we can do if we're wise, is take ourselves through these 4 steps. And it's raining now. I hope it doesn't start. I'm going to have to start walking inside, I think. So the first step is to be aware of what we're feeling, which often, as I said, people are not doing. They're simply not aware of even what am I feeling, and label it. We have to label that feeling. The second step is to acknowledge the truth of how we're feeling without judging it. And again, this is a step that a lot of people don't do. Whatever feeling they're feeling, they tend not to acknowledge it. So we have to acknowledge the truth of how we're feeling, which just simply means I acknowledge I'm feeling lonely. And that already starts to bring relief, because feelings are irrational and thoughts are rational, and feelings can't be thought away. Feelings need to be felt. So we need to acknowledge the truth of how we're feeling. The third step is we need to accept how we're feeling, and that is slightly different from acknowledgement. Once we've acknowledged what the feeling is and we've identified it and labeled it, then we need to accept the truth of this is actually how I'm feeling. Because the thing that emotions want is to be acknowledged and accepted unconditionally without judgment. And that's usually what we're not doing. Usually what most people are doing is they're resisting what they're feeling. They're resisting what is. They're resisting reality. And that creates even more of the feeling that we don't want, or the feeling that is unpleasant. And actually it's the resisting of the feeling that brings the unpleasantness. So we start to change this habit from resisting and ignoring to acknowledging and accepting. And then the next thing that we need to do is take some action. And the action could be various things. It could be the action of self-processing that feeling out of our body through some specific self-processing technique. Or maybe we take action when we're talking about loneliness in terms of, okay, what do I need right now? We ask ourselves, what do I need? And maybe it's like, well, I need to reach out to somebody, and I need to speak to somebody. I need some company. I need some connection. So we take ourselves through these processes, and when we nut it down into a step-by-step formula, then it makes things much easier, and we can really recognize what we need to do. Now, so far I've spoken about the first approach to loneliness, or the first understanding of what actually really creates loneliness, which is this feeling of disconnection from other people. But actually there is a much deeper reason for why we feel lonely, and I only really discovered this in the last year or two. Hi Marie, thank you. I only discovered this in the last year or two when through my Qigong trainings, and really coming to the recognition that the real reason that I had so many years of deep, deep, deep loneliness was because I was disconnected from myself. And in particular, I was disconnected from what in Ren Shui we call my true self, our true self. So everybody has their true self. It's inside them all the time. But we have become disconnected from this part of ourselves, our true self. But most people don't realize that they're disconnected from their true self, that because of unawareness and ignorance of how life works and all that sort of stuff. So when we work on reconnecting with our true self, and for example in yoga, this is the true meaning of yoga. Yoga means union, and it means union with one's true self, divine self. There are many different words for the words I'm using here. I'm just using my words. So when we work on reconnecting and rediscovering our true self, then we find it's impossible to feel lonely, and I can really honestly say that. So this is what I teach and help people to reach. And if you want to know more, then I've got information on my Emotional Alchemy Academy website and my Tao Health Qigong website. And if I remember, I'll put the links in this after this live later. But the point is that we need to do practical things on two levels. We need to manage our emotions, and we need to reach out to people and connect. And then on a deeper internal level, because that first approach is the external level, but on an internal level, we need to work on reconnecting with our true self. And then that will bring true resolution from loneliness. So I hope this has been useful, and I look forward to seeing you in another live.